The champagne bubbles tickled my nose as Mark from accounting raised his glass. To June Carter, the youngest head of marketing in TechWave's history. The conference room erupted in cheers and clinking glasses, but my phone's sudden vibration cut through the celebration like a knife through butter. I nearly dropped my glass when I saw the name. Mother. 5 years of silence. And now she decides to grace me with a text message. Darling, we simply must celebrate your promotion. The whole family is so proud. Dinner at the house this Saturday. Your sister Lydia can't wait to see you. The room suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. My colleagues' laughter faded into white noise as memories crashed over me like waves. Lydia's dance recitals, where mother and father sat front row, beaming. My college graduation, where they showed up 2 hours late because Lydia had a modeling callback. The constant stream of, "Why can't you be more like your sister? Everything okay?" Sarah from Creative touched my arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. Just family stuff. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, like the dregs of cheap coffee. The famous Carter family. Sarah raised an eyebrow. She'd heard enough drunk confessions during late-night project deadlines to know the highlights of that particular soap opera. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Grandmother Evelyn. "They're planning something, June. Come to tea tomorrow. We need to talk." At least Grandmother had always seen through their act. She'd been my shelter during the storms of childhood, the only one who noticed how I disappeared into books while Lydia commanded center stage with her latest crisis or achievement. "Actually, I need some air." I set down my untouched champagne and headed for my office, my heels clicking against the polished floors like a countdown timer. Behind my closed door, I pulled up Mother's social media. There it was, Lydia's latest post about her influencer journey hitting a rough patch. Her follower count had dropped significantly. The timing of Mother's sudden interest in my life made perfect sense now. My computer pinged with a new email. The quarterly marketing presentation I'd been preparing for weeks had somehow corrupted. As I tried to recover the file, another message popped up from Lydia's personal email address sent 3 hours ago. "Hey sis, can't wait to catch up. BTW, do you know anyone at Instatech? My engagement numbers are down, and I could really use some insider tips. XOXO. The pieces clicked into place like a poison puzzle. Mother's text. The corrupted presentation. Lydia's desperate grab for social media relevance. They needed my connections, my corporate influence. The prodigal daughter was only welcome home because she'd become useful. I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out the family photo I'd kept as a reminder. Mother and father flanking Lydia at her high school graduation, their faces glowing with pride. I stood at the edge, half cropped out of the frame. My phone lit up again. Aunt Clara this time. Don't trust Helen's sudden change of heart. She and Lydia are up to their old tricks. Call me. I touched the screen of my phone, hovering over Mother's message. The cursor blinked, waiting for my response. 5 years of therapy had taught me about boundaries, about protecting myself from toxic family dynamics. But something darker stirred in my chest, a desire to play their game and win. I typed, "Saturday sounds perfect. Can't wait to share all my success stories." Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served with a smile and a strategic plan. After all, I didn't become head of marketing by playing nice. Let them think they're pulling the strings. I've learned a few tricks of my own since I was that invisible girl on the edge of the frame. Grandmother Evelyn's Victorian mansion smelled of Earl Grey and secrets. She sat in her favorite wingback chair, her silver hair catching the afternoon light, while I paced across the antique Persian rug. "Your mother called me this morning," she said, setting down her teacup with a delicate clink. "Apparently, she's planning quite the spectacle for Saturday. The whole Carter clan will be there, including Aunt Clara." Helen tried to exclude her, naturally, but Clara invited herself the moment she heard you were coming. A slight smile crossed Grandmother's face. "Your aunt has always had excellent timing." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lydia. Can't wait to introduce you to my new business partners. They'd love to hear about your marketing expertise. She's not even trying to be subtle anymore, I muttered, showing grandmother the message. Your sister never learned the art of subtlety, neither did Helen. Grandmother reached for a leather-bound photo album. Come here, dear, there's something you should see. The album fell open to a yellowed newspaper clipping. Local socialite, Helen Carter, faces bankruptcy allegations. The headline screamed. The date was from 3 months ago. They've kept this quiet, grandmother said, her voice sharp as cut glass. Your father's golf club membership, Helen's charity board positions, Lydia's sponsored posts. It's all smoke and mirrors now. They're drowning in debt, and you're their life raft. My fingers traced the newsprint. So that's why they suddenly remembered I exist. Helen's been calling all her old contacts, trying to secure investments for Lydia's influencer empire. Grandmother's tone dripped with disdain. Nobody's biting. But you? With your new position at TechWave. They want me to connect Lydia with our social media partners. The pieces clicked into place, like tumblers in a lock. Get her verified, boost her engagement, maybe even land her a brand ambassador role. The doorbell chimed, and Sophie burst in, her tablet clutched to her chest. June, I found something weird. She skidded to a stop, her sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. Lydia's been buying followers, lots of them, but they're disappearing faster than she can replace them. Show me, I said. And Sophie pulled up a complex web of analytics that would make our IT department proud. She's desperate, grandmother observed. Desperate people make dangerous moves. My phone lit up with a call from Aunt Clara. June, honey, are you at Mother's? Stay there. I just overheard Helen and Paul at the country club. They're planning to. The call dropped. I tried redialing, but it went straight to voicemail. I should go, I said, gathering my things. I need to prepare for Saturday. Grandmother caught my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Remember who you are, June. You're not that invisible girl anymore. You're a Carter woman, and we don't break, we get even. Sophie looked up from her tablet, her eyes wide. I could help. I'm really good at finding things people try to hide online. No, grandmother and I said simultaneously. But, Sophie, I knelt to her level. Sometimes the best way to help is to watch and wait. Keep tracking Lydia's numbers, but don't let anyone know what you're doing. Can you be my secret agent? She nodded solemnly, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. As I drove home, another text came through, from Father this time. Looking forward to having the family together again. Your mother says you're bringing the marketing presentation you're working on. Lydia's very interested in learning from your experience. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. They weren't just after connections. They wanted my actual work, my ideas, everything I'd built, while they pretended I didn't exist. Fine, let them think I'm the same pushover who used to fade into the background at family gatherings. Let them believe their act is working. But this time, when the curtain falls, they'll find out exactly what kind of daughter they created. I pulled into my driveway just as another text came through. An unknown number. I know what they did to you. I can help. Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m., Blue Harbor Coffee. The game was changing, and so were the players. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. The Carter family mansion loomed before me like a mausoleum of memories. Through the leaded glass windows, I could see shadows moving, hear the murmur of voices. 5 years of absence hadn't changed a thing. The manicured lawns, the pretentious fountain, the suffocating weight of expectations. Aunt Clara intercepted me before I reached the front door. Thank God you're here early. She pulled me behind a massive hydrangea bush. Helen's invited the Blackwoods. My stomach dropped. The venture capitalists, all 3 partners, plus their social media team. Clara's lips tightened. Lydia's wearing that white dress she wore to your college graduation. Of course she was. The dress she'd worn while announcing her modeling contract. Stealing focus, just as I was about to give my valedictorian speech. Inside, Mother's carefully orchestrated tableau awaited. Lydia held court in the center of the living room, surrounded by men in expensive suits. Her white dress gleamed under the chandelier like a spotlight. June, Mother's voice carried across the room, pitch perfect in its false warmth. Everyone, this is my eldest. She's doing something in computers. Head of marketing at TechWave, Father corrected. But his eyes were fixed on Marcus Blackwood, who was hanging on Lydia's every word. June's been instrumental in our influencer partnerships, Lydia gushed, reaching for my arm. Haven't you, sis? In fact, she's bringing her whole strategy presentation tonight. We should all take notes. I felt the trap closing. The Blackwoods leaned forward, suddenly more interested. Mother's smile sharpened. Actually, I said, I thought we could discuss something else first. I pulled out my phone, opened Sophie's analytics. Like how your follower count dropped by 60% last month. All bot accounts, according to this data. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Don't be ridiculous, Lydia laughed, but her fingers twisted in her dress. June's always been jealous of my social media success, right, Mother? Perhaps this isn't the time, Mother started, but Marcus Blackwood was already frowning at his tablet. These numbers don't match what you showed us earlier, Miss Carter. Oh, those were projections, Lydia waved dismissively. June, darling, you're embarrassing yourself. Not everyone understands marketing like you do. You're right, I smiled, channeling Grandmother Evelyn's steel-wrapped-in silk tone. So let me explain it simply. You're trying to scam these investors with fake numbers while stealing my work to cover your tracks. How am I doing so far? The Blackwoods exchanged glances. Father's golf tan seemed to pale. Helen, Marcus said carefully, I think we should reschedule our discussion. No. Lydia's composure cracked. June's lying. She's always been jealous, always trying to ruin everything. Tell them, Mother. But Mother was staring at her phone, where notifications were popping up rapidly. Sophie's data had somehow found its way to several industry watchdog accounts. You vindictive bitch, Lydia hissed, dropping all pretense. You couldn't stand that they finally needed me instead of you. Needed you? I laughed. They needed my connections to save you from bankruptcy. I saw the newspaper article, Lydia. I know about the debt. The Blackwoods were already gathering their coats. Father followed them, desperately trying to salvage something from the wreckage. You've ruined everything, Mother said, her voice trembling. After all we've done for you. All you've done for me? The words escaped before I could stop them. When you missed my graduation, when you forgot my birthday 3 years running, or when you ignored me for 5 years until you needed my corporate contacts. Lydia lunged for my phone. Delete those posts. Delete them now. Or what? I stepped back. You'll sabotage my work presentation again. Sophie found your digital fingerprints all over that too. The color drained from her face. Ladies, Aunt Clara's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, Grandmother Evelyn beside her. I believe this evening is finished. As I turned to leave, Mother called out, if you walk away now, don't expect to be welcomed back. I paused at the door, thinking of all the times I'd yearned for that welcome. Don't worry, Mother. I stopped expecting anything from you a long time ago. But this wasn't the end. The real revenge was still to come. And it would be served at TechWave's annual shareholders meeting, where Lydia's desperation would take center stage in ways she never imagined. Grandmother Evelyn's study had become my war room. Sophie sat cross-legged on the Persian rug, surrounded by tablets and laptops, while Aunt Clara paced by the window. They're getting desperate, Sophie announced, spinning one of the screens toward me. Lydia's trying to hack your work email. She's not very good at it, but someone is helping her, Clara added, her reflection sharp in the darkened window. Your father's been making calls to his old tech industry contacts. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah at TechWave. CEO wants to see you ASAP. Something about family connections compromising company security? The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of Grandmother's mahogany desk. June. Grandmother's voice cut through my panic. Open the bottom left drawer. Inside lay a thick manila envelope, yellowed with age. The documents inside made my breath catch. Board meeting minutes from father's old company, dated 20 years ago. Embezzlement accusations, covered up scandals. Helen Carter's name appeared repeatedly in the margins. Your mother wasn't just a socialite, grandmother said quietly. She was the company's PR director. When the scandal broke, she buried it, along with several careers. And now they're trying the same play, Clara muttered, using Lydia's social media empire as cover for something bigger. Sophie's tablet pinged. June? Lydia just posted something weird. The video showed Lydia in her signature influencer pose, but her eyes held an unfamiliar steel. Time to clear the air about family loyalty, she began. My sister June has been sabotaging my career out of jealousy. But what TechWave doesn't know is the video cut off. My phone exploded with messages from the office. She's bluffing, Clara said, but her voice wavered. No. I pulled up my work calendar. The shareholders' meeting is tomorrow. They're not just after my connections. They want to discredit me completely. If I lose credibility with the board, you lose everything you've built, grandmother finished, just like the people your mother destroyed 20 years ago. Sophie looked up from her screams. There's something else. Someone's been accessing TechWave's servers from your parents' house. The traffic patterns match the ones from when your presentation was corrupted. My fingers traced the old documents. They taught Lydia well. Use someone else's success to hide your own failures. Make them look unstable, untrustworthy. June. Grandmother's voice held a warning. Remember what revenge cost those people 20 years ago. But I was already moving, gathering my things. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is survival. Where are you going? Clara called after me. To see Mother. The drive to the Carter mansion felt different this time. No anxiety, no doubt, just cold clarity. Helen opened the door in her perfect hostess pose, surprise barely flickering across her face. June, darling, what a pleasant. 20 years ago, I cut in. How many lives did you destroy to save father's reputation? Her mask slipped for just a moment. I did what was necessary to protect this family. No. You did what was necessary to protect your image. Just like now. I don't know what you're talking about. The Blackwoods weren't just investors for Lydia's influence scheme, were they? They're looking for new ways to hide money. Just like father did back then. A shadow crossed the foyer. Lydia, phone in hand, already recording. You're upset, dear. Mother's voice dripped concern. All this pressure at work must be getting to you. Perhaps if you took a break. Stop. My voice didn't shake. Tomorrow at the shareholders' meeting, Lydia's going to accuse me of corporate espionage. Plant evidence that I've been leaking company secrets. Meanwhile, you'll use the chaos to set up whatever scheme you're running with the Blackwoods. Mother's smile turned razor sharp, proving my point about your mental state, dear. Such paranoid accusations. I have the documents, Mother, all of them, including what really happened to David Chen's family after you finished destroying him. The color drained from her face. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, turning to leave. You're going to call off tomorrow's plan, or I'll show everyone exactly what kind of family legacy you're trying to protect. Behind me, Lydia's phone lowered slowly, her face a mirror of Mother's shock. Sometimes the best defense isn't just a good offense. It's the truth you've been running from all along. The shareholders' meeting loomed an hour away when Lydia appeared in my office doorway. Her designer outfit couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes, the slight tremor in her manicured hands. We need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. I didn't look up from my laptop. Unless you're here to confess to corporate espionage, we have nothing to discuss. I found David Chen. My fingers froze over the keyboard. He's been living in Seattle, Lydia continued, perching on the edge of my desk like we were sharing secrets at a slumber party. Working as a janitor, his daughter, the one who was supposed to go to medical school before Mother destroyed their lives, she's a waitress. Why are you telling me this? Because Mother's going to destroy you too. She pulled out her phone, showed me a series of texts. The Blackwoods aren't just investors. They're buying TechWave through shell companies. Once they control the board, They'll bury me like they buried Chen. The pieces clicked into place. And you're helping them. I was. Lydia's voice cracked. But after what you said about Chen's family, I called him. He told me everything. A knock at the door made us both jump. Sarah poked her head in. June. Board's assembling early. They want to discuss some concerns about security breaches. 5 minutes, I said, my mind racing. When Sarah left, I turned back to Lydia. Why should I believe you? Because I recorded Mother's conversation with the Blackwoods last night. She held up her phone again. After you left, they spent 2 hours planning how to discredit you. Mother suggested using my social media following to start rumors about your mental state. Dad's already called his old friends on the board. My computer pinged. Another attempt to access my files. Sophie's tracking program caught it coming from the Blackwoods office. What do you want, Lydia? I want out. Her carefully constructed facade cracked. Mother's been controlling my whole life, propping up my influencer career while stealing my trust fund to cover Dad's debts. I thought if I helped them take you down, they'd finally see me as more than just their backup plan. The office intercom buzzed. Miss Carter, the board is waiting. I stood, gathering my presentation materials. You realize if you're lying, you're not just destroying my career, you're destroying any chance of us ever being real sisters. I know. She pulled out a USB drive. That's why I brought insurance. Everything's here. Mother's schemes, Dad's embezzlement, the Blackwoods shell companies, plus my confession about helping them hack your files. The intercom buzzed again, more insistent. Why now? I asked, taking the drive. Because I saw your old journals in Grandmother's study. The ones where you wrote about protecting me from Mother's criticism when we were kids. All those times you took the blame for my mistakes. She wiped at her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. I never deserved a sister like you, but maybe I can deserve one now. My phone lit up with texts from Sophie. Board meetings weird. Blackwoods arrived with lawyers. Grandmother says be careful. If we do this, I said, there's no going back. Mother and Father will never forgive either of us. They never really loved either of us, Lydia replied. They just loved what we could do for them. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket, its weight like a grenade waiting to detonate. Follow my lead in there, and Lydia, if you're playing me, remember, I learned manipulation from the best. She nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw my little sister instead of Mother's perfect puppet. The walk to the boardroom felt like marching into battle. Through the glass walls, I could see Mother and Father seated beside the Blackwoods, all wearing expressions of concerned disappointment. They thought they had me cornered. They didn't know I had their princess ready to help burn down their castle. I pushed open the boardroom door, Lydia at my heels. Time to show them exactly what happened when you push the forgotten daughter too far. The boardroom felt like a courtroom, with 12 pairs of eyes dissecting my every move. Mother sat perfectly poised, her concerned expression a masterpiece of manipulation. Father studied his folded hands, while Marcus Blackwood cleared his throat. Miss Carter, serious allegations have been made about your stability. My presentation slides flickered on the screen behind me. Corrupted, scrambled, showing fabricated data that made me look incompetent at best, criminal at worst. Someone had gotten past Sophie's security measures. We have evidence, Mother interjected softly, of erratic behavior, paranoid accusations against family members. Play the recording, I interrupted, nodding to Lydia. She reached for her phone, but her hand trembled. I can't find it. Mother's smile widened fractionally. Of course, she'd known Lydia would crack. Probably had someone wipe her phone remotely the moment we entered the room. June, Father spoke for the first time, his golf-tanned face creased with manufactured worry. We're only trying to help. Perhaps a leave of absence. The boardroom door burst open. Sarah rushed in, her face pale. The servers. Someone's downloading everything. Customer data. Financial records, everything. Marcus Blackwood's concern vanished, replaced by predatory focus. Clearly, Miss Carter's instability has compromised company security. I move for immediate termination. I have proof, I said, reaching for the USB drive in my pocket. My fingers met empty fabric. Lydia's eyes widened with genuine horror. Mother asked to borrow my jacket before the meeting. She must have. Darling, Mother cut in. You're not making sense, Mr. Blackwood. I think we should call security. My phone buzzed. Sophie, grandmother collapsed. At hospital. Hurry. The room tilted. Too many fronts. Too many battles. They'd orchestrated everything perfectly. The corrupted presentation. The missing evidence. Even grandmother's convenient emergency. The board needs to vote, Marcus announced. Miss Carter's position at TechWave has become untenable. Wait, Lydia stood suddenly. I need to confess something. Mother's hand clamped on her wrist. Sweetheart, you're upset. Let's step outside. No, Security's here, Father announced as two guards entered. June, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. My career imploded in slow motion. The board's unanimous vote. Security escorting me out. My access badge deactivated. 5 years of work erased in 15 minutes. In the lobby, Mother caught up with me. You should have stayed away, June. The forgotten daughter routine suited you. What did you do to grandmother? Nothing permanent, just enough to keep you distracted. She adjusted her perfect pearls. The Blackwoods will acquire TechWave next week. Your evidence has been destroyed. And Lydia, well, she'll learn the cost of betrayal. You're going to destroy her too? I'm going to remind her where her loyalty belongs. Just like I reminded David Chen's daughter about loyalty when she tried to expose us last time. The threat hung between us like poison. You have 24 hours to leave town, Mother continued. If you don't, Chen's daughter might have another unfortunate accident. And Lydia, she smiled. Well, the internet can be so cruel to failing influencers. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. Chen here. Got your message. Meeting set for midnight. Bringing proof. I deleted it immediately. But Mother's expression told me she'd seen something in my face. Oh, June, she sighed. Still plotting? You never could accept that I'm always 3 steps ahead. Ask yourself, who gave Chen your number in the first place? The lobby doors opened. Lydia stumbled out, mascara streaked, clutching her phone. They're deleting everything. My accounts, my followers. Father's lawyers say they'll freeze my assets if I don't cooperate. Mother's smile never wavered. Choose carefully, girls. Remember, I made you both. I can unmake you just as easily. She glided away, leaving us in the wreckage of our rebellion. My career destroyed, grandmother in danger, Lydia's life unraveling, and somewhere in Seattle, the Chen family facing fresh threats. My phone buzzed one last time. Sophie. Found something weird in the server logs, but hurry, they're trying to silence me too. The game wasn't over. But for the first time, I wondered if winning would cost more than losing. The TechWave annual gala buzzed with nervous energy. Through the glass walls of the convention center, I watched Mother working the room, her smile sharp as a blade. The Blackwoods huddled with their lawyers, while Father checked his phone compulsively. Ready? Sophie whispered, her tablet glowing with lines of code. Everyone in position? I asked through my earpiece. David Chen and his daughter are by the west entrance, Aunt Clara confirmed. Grandmother's security footage is queued up. Lydia, static crackled. Then, in Mother's office, found the USB drive. But June, there's something else here, something worse. The lights dimmed. Marcus Blackwood took the stage, champagne in hand. Tonight, we celebrate TechWave's bright future under new management. I nodded to Sophie. Screens around the room flickered, then filled with security footage from Mother's office. The audio crackled to life. The Chen girl's accident can be arranged. Mother's voice rang out. Just like last time. Once June's discredited, the Blackwoods can acquire TechWave through our shell companies. No one will trace it back to us. The room froze. Mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on marble. But wait, Sophie grinned. There's more. The screen split. Decades of financial records, falsified documents, evidence of the systematic destruction of families like the Chens. Mother's perfectly crafted world, exposed in high definition. Security, Marcus Blackwood shouted, but the guards didn't move. They work for me now, Grandmother Evelyn announced, entering with 2 police officers. Or rather, for the SEC agents who've been investigating you all for months. Mother's mask cracked. Helen, Father started, but she silenced him with a look that could freeze hell. You ungrateful little snake, she hissed at me. Everything I did was to protect this family's legacy. No, Lydia emerged from the crowd, holding up her phone. Everything you did was to protect yourself. Want to explain these offshore accounts? The ones in my name that I never knew about. Lydia, darling. Don't. My sister's voice shook. I found the real records. You've been embezzling my trust fund for years, using my social media accounts to launder money, making me an accomplice. You were nothing before I made you. Mother's composure shattered completely. Both of you, ungrateful, worthless. Mrs. Carter, one of the officers stepped forward. You need to come with us. She lunged for her phone, but Sophie was faster. Already locked you out, my niece smirked. Turns out, I'm better at hacking than your expensive consultants. It's over, Helen, Grandmother said quietly. The truth always finds its way home. Mother's eyes darted around the room, finding nothing but turned backs and recording phones. Her carefully curated audience, witnessing her downfall in real time. June. She straightened her spine, summoning one last attempt at control. You think this is victory? You've destroyed our family. No, Mother, you did that years ago. I'm just bringing it into the light. The officers moved forward with handcuffs. Father seemed to age decades in moments. The Blackwoods were already being led away, their lawyers abandoning ship. Miss Carter, Sarah appeared at my elbow. The board wants to speak with you. Something about reinstating your position and reviewing the attempted takeover? Lydia touched my arm. Go, I need to make some calls anyway. Apparently my followers deserve to know they've been part of a money laundering scheme. As Mother was led past us, she paused. I made you both, she said quietly. Remember that. No, I replied. We made ourselves. Despite you, not because of you. The room buzzed with conversations, phones, and the sound of an empire crumbling. Through the glass walls, camera flashes lit up the night like lightning. Tomorrow the headlines would tell a story of corporate intrigue and family betrayal. But tonight, watching Mother's perfect posture finally break as the officers led her away, I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet certainty that some victories come at a price, and some families need to break before they can heal. Sophie's tablet pinged one last time. June, Grandmother wants to know if you're ready for phase 2. I smiled. The night wasn't over yet, neither was justice. Grandmother's study felt different now, the morning light casting new shadows across familiar spaces. The old leather chairs still held their places, but the energy had shifted. Like the house itself could sense the change in the family's gravity. The SEC investigation is complete, Aunt Clara said, setting down her coffee. Helen took a plea deal, 20 years, minimum. And Father? 5 years, plus restitution to all the families they destroyed. Clara smiled grimly. The Chens will get their medical school money back, with interest. Sophie sprawled across the Persian rug, surrounded by tablets displaying news headlines. Tech wave scandal rocks tech industry. Social media empire revealed. As money laundering front, Carter family legacy unravels. Your sister's latest video has 10 million views, she announced. I didn't need to watch it. Lydia's public confession had gone viral. The favored daughter, exposing the twisted machinery behind her perfect life. She'd traded her influencer empire for something raw and real, documenting her journey to untangle herself from Mother's web. The board meeting went well, Grandmother asked, though she already knew the answer. Unanimous vote. I'm officially CEO of TechWave. The words still felt strange on my tongue. First order of business. establishing a foundation for victims of corporate fraud. Helen would hate that. Clara grinned. It's perfect. A knock at the door made us all turn. David Chen's daughter stood there, clutching a familiar manila envelope. "We found more documents," she said. "From before my father's accident. There are other families, other cover-ups. There always are." Grandmother's voice held steel beneath its silk. "That's why June's work isn't finished." My phone buzzed. A message from Lydia. "Meeting with prosecutors tomorrow. Found mother's old contact books, ready to name names." Another text followed. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm trying to be the sister you deserved." Sophie looked up from her tablets. The algorithm flagged something weird. Someone's accessing Helen's old accounts from inside prison. "Mother never works alone," I said. "She's already planning her comeback. Let her try." Grandmother stood, moving to the window. "The truth doesn't fear manipulation. Not anymore." I joined her, watching autumn leaves dance across the lawn where Lydia and I once played. Before Mother's ambitions poisoned everything. The old family photos still lined the walls, but they felt like artifacts now. Cautionary tales rather than proud displays. "I received Helen's letter this morning," Grandmother said quietly. "She wants me to release funds for an appeal. Says she did everything for the family's legacy. And I told her the legacy died the moment she chose appearance over love." She turned, her eyes sharp as ever. "But legacies can be rebuilt, June. On foundations of truth, this time." The morning sun caught the edge of Mother's old portrait above the fireplace. Tomorrow it would come down. The space would hold something new. Perhaps Sophie's coding awards, or Lydia's journalism certificate from the classes she'd started taking. "You know she'll never stop," Clara warned. "Helen will spend every day in prison, plotting her revenge." "Good," I smiled, thinking of the evidence still hidden in Sophie's encrypted files. "Let her plot. We'll be ready." A final text lit up my phone. From an unknown number. "Your mother sends regards. Remember, every empire has weak points, even new ones." I showed it to Grandmother, who merely nodded. "The game never really ends, does it?" "No," I agreed. "But this time, we're playing by different rules." Outside, cars began arriving for the Foundation's first board meeting. David Chen's daughter straightened her blazer, ready to present her findings. Sophie gathered her tablets, her young face set with purpose. Aunt Clara checked her notes on other families coming forward. The old grandfather clock struck 10, its chimes echoing through halls that had witnessed generations of Carter's secrets. But secrets had no power here anymore. Not in this new legacy we were building, one truth at a time. Mother's portrait watched as we left the study, her painted smile frozen in time. Let her watch, let her plot. Some victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about choosing which game to play. And we weren't playing her game anymore.
My name is Mary, and I'm 38 years old. For the past 14 years, I've been a homemaker, married to Scott, a successful doctor. Though we never had children, our life together was stable, reasonable, even happy. But one evening, everything changed. Scott came home late, as usual, and dropped a bombshell. "Mary," he said, his voice cold, "this is the end for us." Confused, I asked, "What do you mean?" "I've decided to marry my mistress," he replied bluntly. "We're getting divorced today." "Marry your mistress?" I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" "I've made up my mind. I'm leaving you for her. Besides, we didn't marry for love, so I'm sure you won't mind." It was true. Our marriage hadn't been born from love. Scott's parents wanted him to marry, and they found me to be a suitable match. We barely knew each other when we got married, and it happened quickly. The only thing we shared in common was our last name. People would call it fate, and for a while, I liked that idea. We managed our marriage, but I never imagined it would end this way. After 14 years. "Are you seriously going to marry her?" I asked. "When did you even start seeing her?" "It's not cheating," he shot back. "I met her about a year ago. She works as a lawyer at a hospital. and she's everything you're not charming, caring, and full of life. It's natural I'd be drawn to her. Natural? I was in disbelief. You think this is natural? Yes, he said, his voice firm. These 14 years with you have been hell. I'm done supporting someone so boring, but it ends today. I was at a loss for words. How can you say that? It's the truth, he said. You're just a homemaker who does nothing. She's a successful lawyer. Ask any man. They choose her over you. A doctor like me doesn't need someone like you. I stood frowning. I never thought Scott could speak to me this way, so calmly, so cruelly. Fine, I said, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. Let's divorce. We can discuss alimony and property division later. With a lawyer, I'll sign the divorce papers and send them to you. Scott interrupted. No need for all that. We don't even need divorce papers. What do you mean? We can't just separate without them? You're so naive, he sneered. We're not even married. I stared at him, horrified. What are you talking about? We've been married for 14 years. We're not, he said casually. I never submitted our marriage registration. We've just been cohabiting all this time. No marriage, no divorce, no alimony. You thought you'd get my money, but you won't get a penny. The words didn't make sense. Are you joking? We've been living as a married couple all these years. Normally, yes, he said, but when we got married, I set some rules. I take care of all the official matters, and you'd handle the house. I never filed the marriage papers. I wasn't about to make it official. I married you as a housekeeper, and it worked for both of us. I was stunned, speechless. You should have refused the proposal in the first place. Then, I couldn't, he said with a shrug. My parents were insistent, and besides, I needed someone to handle the house while I focused on my work. It was a good deal for you, too. You didn't have to work, and you had a roof over your head. Plus, you were probably feeling pressured by your friends to get married. You were seen as the woman who married a doctor. Our whole relationship was a win-win for both of us, and now it ends. You should be grateful for the time you had. I couldn't process the anger and humiliation coursing through me. And what about my father? I asked, trying to hold on to my composure. You're threatening him, aren't you? Scott's face hardened. If you do anything stupid, I'll make sure your father's contract with the hospital ends. You won't do anything to ruin your father's business, right? My father ran a medical equipment company, and it was through my marriage to Scott that we'd made important connections, but I wasn't afraid. I smiled. Despite everything I knew about your mistress, and I knew you never submitted our marriage registration. Scott stared at me, his face twisting with disbelief. That's impossible. For the past 5 months, I had suspected Scott was having an affair, but I didn't have enough proof to confront him. I spent that time preparing for the inevitable day when he would bring it up, planning my revenge, so I hired a private investigator. Ma'am, there are 2 things I need to tell you, the investigator said. First, your husband is indeed having an affair. We have evidence of him entering a hotel with a woman named Lauren from his workplace. Second, from their conversations, it seems you two are not legally married. Not legally married. I was confused. What does that mean? The investigator continued. I overheard your husband and his mistress at a cafe. He said they didn't need to worry about alimony or property division because they never submitted a marriage registration. I was stunned. I can't believe it. We've been living as a married couple for 14 years. I don't know why he didn't submit the marriage registration. The investigator replied. That's why he never let you handle any official procedures. How could this happen? I whispered, barely able to process the information. It's rare, but not unheard of, for someone to go 14 years without submitting the marriage registration. But if we were never married, what can I do? Not necessarily, the investigator said, his voice taking on a more determined tone. There is still a way to make him pay for deceiving you all these years. We need to prepare, without him noticing. And so, I began to make my move with the investigator's help. Scott, of course, was confident. So what if you knew we were never married? He scoffed. It doesn't matter what I do with other women. I don't have to take responsibility. I felt foolish for not knowing sooner, but in that moment, it was clear he was the one who should feel pitiful. What do you mean? I asked, looking at him coldly. We were never legally married, Scott said smugly. We were just living together. You're wrong, I said, barely able to contain my anger. We may not have been married, but we had what's called a common law relationship, and in a common law marriage, you can't claim alimony and divide property. You didn't know that, did you? Scott's face turned white. What? And now you're telling me to hand over the money I worked hard for and the furniture I bought? Yes, that's correct, the lawyer replied calmly. The money you earned and the furniture are subject to property division. Why does it have to be like that? Scott demanded. Who did the housework while I was working? Who cooked the meals with the groceries I bought? That's irrelevant now, the lawyer said. No, it's very relevant. A homemaker is entitled to property division because housework and child care have economic value. Speaking as a human, not just a lawyer, do you think housework is something anyone can do? That it's just expected of a homemaker. The reason you were able to live freely is because of her support. Don't get that wrong. Scott didn't respond immediately, but his face flushed with anger. This situation is the result of your actions, the lawyer continued, yet you have the audacity to be selfish about it. What did you say? Scott muttered, but the lawyer ignored him. Anyway, she's entitled to half of the assets for property division, the lawyer stated firmly. That's how it is. Damn, Scott muttered under his breath. And regarding alimony, we intend to claim $200, 000 from you, the lawyer added, keeping his tone steady. $200, 000. Why so much for a relationship that wasn't even a marriage? Scott protested. It's precisely because you weren't married normally. Alimony claims in common law relationships typically range from $20, 000 to $80, 000. The lawyer explained. However, in your case, you pretended to be married for 14 years and selfishly tried to discard her when you found someone else. The amount is determined by the severity and duration of your actions. Scott clenched his jaw, but the lawyer didn't stop. You might think 14 years is a short time, but it's longer than you realize. During that time, she devoted herself to you, believing you were truly married. You have no right to complain after betraying her. It was a perfect rebuttal. Scott fell silent. Clearly defeated, he reluctantly agreed to my demands. I also sent a notice of claim for alimony to his mistress. Thanks to the investigator, I knew exactly who she was and where to find her. Her name was Lauren, and she worked at the same hospital. When she received the notice, she must have been shocked. Wait a minute, this isn't what you told me, she said to Scott when she confronted him. What do you want? Scott snapped. I told you not to talk to me at the hospital. I got this from your wife. You said there wouldn't be any alimony because we weren't married. What's this all about? In a panic, Lauren confronted Scott at the hospital with the notice I sent. Okay, let's talk about this later. Not here. There are too many people around, Scott said, his voice urgent. We'll both be in trouble if this turns into a rumor. I don't care about that, Lauren shot back. I can't pay this amount of alimony. You said it was okay, so you should pay it for me. I will pay not a penny, Scott said, trying to push the responsibility onto her. You were the one who married me. You said I was the only one for you and that you wanted to marry me. Hey, quiet down. Everyone can hear us, Lauren hissed, looking around. Just so you know, I'm not in the wrong here. If you want to make amends with your wife, do it yourself. Tell her I don't owe her a penny, and you take care of everything. This exchange revealed their affair to the entire hospital. The gossip quickly spread, and Scott and Lauren became the talk of the place. The final blow came when my father, in response to the scandal, requested the hospital cancel their contract with the facility. We apologize, but we would like to terminate our contract at the end of next month, my father informed the hospital. The hospital, aware of the rumors, asked, excuse me for asking, but is the reason for canceling the contract related to Dr. Scott's affair? It's already becoming a rumor, especially since Lauren is presumed to be involved. I couldn't believe it had come to this. I never imagined Scott had been pretending to be married for 14 years without submitting a marriage registration. The hospital staff was shocked. "You mean he never submitted the registration? Were you not aware?" they asked. All we knew was that Scott had been married and had an affair. The revelation that he hadn't even submitted the marriage registration was a shock to me and the hospital staff. The rumors didn't just stay within the hospital. Word quickly spread to patients, and both Scott and Lauren received cold stares. Unable to endure the scandal, they both resigned. My father later asked, "Did you manage to get the alimony?" "Yes, I received payments from both him and his mistress," I replied. She initially refused to pay, claiming she was deceived, but the lawyer made it clear her argument wouldn't hold. She reluctantly agreed to pay. "That's good," my father said. "And what about the contract with the hospital? Did it get cancelled?" "No, that's off the table," I said. "Scott resigned, and since our company is trusted, the hospital asked us not to cancel the contract. We couldn't cancel it after they asked like that." "That's a relief," my father said. I moved on with my life in a new place, finding happiness again. A year and a half later, my ex-husband contacted me. "Is it true you got remarried?" he asked, his voice tight. I had married a man I met at work, and somehow, Scott had found out. "Whose number is this?" I wondered, irritated by his audacity. "You're going through the trouble of changing your number just to contact me." "Just answer my question," he demanded. "Did you get married?" "Yes, I got married," I replied. "You betrayed me. We were never legally married, so I didn't think it would matter to you." "That's a different matter," he said, his tone bitter. "Things are different now. We're completely separated, so my marriage has nothing to do with you." "Is that why you contacted me?" I asked, feeling a mix of confusion and amusement. Scott seemed at a loss for words. "Of course you're still unmarried," he sneered, "since you probably hadn't submitted a marriage registration again. You're that kind of woman." But things weren't as he imagined. "Unfortunately for you," I said calmly, "my husband isn't the kind of person to do such terrible things. He knows all about your story. To make sure I wouldn't feel anxious, we went to the office together to submit the registration." I paused, letting my words sink in. "Sadly for you, things aren't as you thought." Scott didn't respond. "I understand you might want me to be unhappy because you're miserable," I added, "but sorry, we're happily married." I hung up the phone and felt a sense of finality. I didn't know what kind of life he led now, but unless he changed his selfish ways, it was unlikely he'd ever find happiness. "Yes," I said, now taking control of the conversation. "You thought you could get away with this, but you're in for a surprise. If a couple lives together with mutual intent to marry and shares household life for more than 2 years, they're considered to be in a common law marriage. We've been together for 14 years, and we had a wedding ceremony. Our families and friends know us as a married couple." Scott was silent as I continued. "So, I'm claiming alimony and property division. I'm not an expert, but I've already consulted a lawyer, and I'm moving forward with this." His arrogance melted away as he realized the truth. "Even if you can't claim alimony and property division, you're just an unemployed homemaker. What's your plan? Rely on your parents after I kick you out?" I looked him in the eye. "I've already found a job. I'm starting next month, and I've been looking at a new place. Don't worry about me." Scott had underestimated me, assuming I'd be helpless without him. The tables had turned. "And just so you know," I added, my voice sharp, "I'm going to tell our parents everything. They think we're still married, so it's only right I inform them that this relationship is ending." His face twisted with panic. "You're calling them? Please, don't. You know how strict my parents are. If they find out about this, I'm done." I shook my head in disbelief. "You're worried about your parents finding out? After 14 years of selfishness, you're afraid of their reaction? You should have refused the marriage in the first place if you never intended to marry. I can accept that." Without hesitation, I picked up my phone and called both of our parents. All 5 of them were shocked and immediately arranged to meet at our house. I've heard everything over the phone. Is it true that you pretended to be married for 14 years without submitting the marriage registration? Scott's father asked, his voice tight with anger. It's true, Scott admitted. I didn't submit it. Why would you do such a thing? Didn't you ever think about how Mary would feel? His father's voice wavered with disbelief. I had no choice, Scott mumbled. No choice. His father's voice rose in frustration. How can you even say that? It's your fault. Dad and Mom, I didn't want to get married, but you started looking for a bride, saying it was time. You arranged meetings and tried to force me into it. You're the ones who pressured me into this marriage. You agreed to it, didn't you? His father shot back. If you were so opposed to it, why didn't you refuse? I had to agree, Scott said, his voice defensive. If I refused, you would have made a scene, so I decided to go along with it. If you were resolved to marry her, why didn't you submit the marriage registration? His father was incredulous. I read about a guy online who was in the same situation, Scott explained. He didn't want to marry either, but he had to. He lived as though he was married without submitting the registration, and then, when he met someone he truly loved, he told the truth and married her for real. That's appalling, his father exclaimed. And what happened to that guy? He's married to the woman he loves now, Scott said, his eyes gleaming with a sense of finality. And I will marry my girlfriend. I'll have a real marriage. At this, my parents, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke. A real marriage. My mother's voice trembled with disbelief. Do you even remember what you said at our wedding? You promised you would care for each other and build a home full of smiles. What did those words mean to you? We sent our daughter to you hoping for her happiness, my father added, his voice heavy with disappointment. But you deceived her for 14 years without submitting a marriage registration. Did you build a home full of smiles? Now you are leaving her for another woman. Can someone who acts with such disregard for others, changing partners without care, truly have a real marriage? I was happy you married our daughter, not just because you were a doctor, my mother continued, her voice breaking. I thought you were sincere, that you could build a happy home together, but it seems we were mistaken and deceived. And then you had the nerve to threaten our daughter. My father's tone turned cold, that if she told us, you'd cut off the contract with our company. Is that true? Scott frowned, his face pale. What? Seriously, my father said, voice like ice, if you're going to threaten our daughter, we'll cut the contract ourselves. We will not tolerate this. Scott's panic was palpable. Please wait. This is getting out of hand. Let's just talk this through. But my father-in-law, now being furious, grabbed Scott by the collar. We didn't raise you to be such a scoundrel. What were you thinking? Father, please stop, Scott said, trying to pull away. You thought you were doing yourself a favor by not submitting the registration, my father-in-law continued. But all you did was string Mary along for 14 years. What were you thinking? Causing this kind of trouble for others. The room fell silent. My husband, facing the weight of my father-in-law's words, had nothing left to say. My parents, I'm truly sorry for all the trouble caused, Scott muttered, but my father cut him off. No, you shouldn't apologize to us, my father said sternly. This isn't our fault. However, as parents, it's partly our responsibility for letting you act this way. Turning to me, he said softly, for now, we'll take him home and make sure he doesn't continue this reckless behavior. We'll deal with the aftermath properly. We're very sorry for all this. With that, Scott was led away by his parents, back to his childhood home. My parents turned to me, their voices filled with warmth and concern. You've been through so much, sweetheart. You should come home and rest. We'll think about what to do next later. You don't need to worry about anything right now. I was exhausted, deceived, and drained, but their kindness was a comfort. Thank you, but I'm not going back home yet, I said, my voice firm. I still have things I need to do. I declined their offer and stayed in my own home, determined to handle this on my own. I had to prepare for the final settlement with my now ex-husband. I gathered evidence for our common law relationship, getting ready to claim alimony and divide our assets. A few weeks later, I arranged a meeting with a lawyer. Even if I agree to alimony, why should I divide the property? Scott rented. She's been a homemaker for 14 years, never worked a day in her life. I've paid for everything: furniture, the clothes, the food.
The phone rang, interrupting the quiet hum of my evening routine. For a moment, I debated whether to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the receiver. "Hello," I said tentatively. A man's voice erupted on the other end, startling me with its intensity. "Hey, Nancy, are you even listening?" I froze. The voice was so familiar, nostalgic even, but also full of anger. It left me reeling. My thoughts stumbled over one another as I struggled to respond. Who is this?" I stammered. "Nancy, it's me, Mark." I gasped. My husband, Mark? That was impossible. He had passed away 10 years ago. "My name is Nancy. I'm 49 years old, a widow, and the mother of 2 children, Jake and Kate. My husband Mark died a decade ago, leaving me to raise our family alone. Jake, my eldest, is 23 now and recently got married. The wedding was last month and I wasn't invited." Jake's decision stung, but it didn't entirely surprise me. We had drifted apart over the years, and I often wondered if it was my fault. I hadn't objected to his fiancée, not outright, but I had voiced my concern of the speed of their relationship. "She seems like a nice girl," I had told him, "but couldn't you take things slower? What's the rush? What if something happens, like with your father, and you regret rushing into this?" Jake's response had been cold and cutting. I still remembered the ache it left in my chest. Mark had been a brilliant man, a college professor specializing in animal behavior. His passion for his work was part of what had drawn me to him in the first place. When he was offered a position at an international research institute, he was ecstatic. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," he had told me, his eyes alight with excitement. The world's leading expert personally invited me to join their team. I had hesitated. Jake's on the brink of his teenage years, and Kate's still so little. "Can't you at least wait until she starts school?" But Mark was relentless. He even got down on his knees to beg. His determination chipped away at my resistance, and I finally relented. How could I deny him the biggest chance of his career? We saw him off at the airport as a family of 3. Watching his plane take off, I felt a pang of unease, but I pushed it aside. I never imagined it would be the last time I saw him. 3 weeks later, I received a message from the embassy. Mark had gone missing during a field research trip. Witnesses said his team had been attacked by wildlife, and Mark was the only one who didn't make it out. Days later, they found his torn right shoe in a forest, kilometers from the attack site. The authorities declared his survival impossible, and he was pronounced dead. The grief was suffocating. I spiraled into depression, barely managing to function. I moved back in with my parents and attended therapy to piece myself back together, all while raising 2 young children without their father. "Mark?" My voice quivered, bringing me back to the present. How are you alive?" "Alive? Nancy, what are you talking about?" Mark's voice was laced with confusion. 10 years ago, you were declared dead during your research trip," I said, my heart pounding. "I've been raising Jake and Kate alone ever since." "What?" His disbelief mirrored my own. "Nancy, that's insane. I couldn't return home, but I've been emailing you all these years. I even sent recent photos of myself, and you sent me pictures of the kids all grown up." His words left me reeling. "Emails? I don't remember any emails." The line went silent. I gripped the phone tightly, struggling to breathe. "Nancy," Mark's voice returned, quieter now. "Are you serious? No emails? None at all?" "Absolutely none," I whispered, my mind racing. This has to be some kind of scam. Or a ghost. "Mark, give me your email address." "Prove it." And with that, the surreal conversation took a turn I could never have expected. I jotted down the email address Mark recited, repeating it back to confirm. Then, with shaky hands, I opened my computer and sent him an email while staying on the phone. "It's sent," I said. There was a moment of silence before Mark's voice broke through. "Is this the email you've been using all these years?" "Yes," I replied. "You know I prefer to have everything in one place." This isn't the address I've been emailing. My heart dropped. For 10 years, Mark had been emailing someone else, believing it was me. The photos of me and the kids, the updates he thought he'd received, had come from someone impersonating me. I've always kept my communications and accounts consolidated. Mark knew that. He exhaled sharply, his voice tinged with confusion. Then who have I been emailing all these years? We were both stunned, grappling with the implications. Can you forward me the emails and attached photos? Let's talk tomorrow after I've had a chance to review them. Okay, Mark's voice was distant, and he hung up soon after. Mark had been alive for a decade, and I had believed he was gone. This was supposed to be a miraculous reunion, but instead, our call ended with unsettling formalities. Reality doesn't unfold like a heartwarming TV drama. Kate came home hungry, and I prepared dinner, my thoughts racing. Hours later, after Kate had gone to bed, I returned to my computer. Mark had sent 3 emails. My hands trembled as I opened the first one. The first email began, "Today was Kate's first day of elementary school. She seemed sad being the only one without her dad there. When will we finally get a family picture?" Attached was a photo of Kate standing shyly in front of her school's entrance, clutching her backpack. My breath caught. I recognized the picture. I had taken it, but I didn't remember ever sending it to Mark. The second email was a collage of family moments. Jake's high school graduation, Kate in a summer dress with her friends, Jake's 18th birthday, a family trip to the beach. The sheer number of private photos made my head spin. The third email was even more chilling. It contained photos from Jake's wedding, Jake with his bride, a sibling portrait of Jake and Kate, and even a shot of me with Jake. I leaned back in my chair, numb. Most of these photos were from holiday cards or personal updates I'd shared with close friends and family. Only someone in my inner circle could have had access to them. The truth hit me like a freight train. Someone in my family had been impersonating me. The phone rang the next day. "Did you see the emails?" Mark asked. "Yes," I replied softly. "I didn't send any of those." "I know," Mark said grimly. "I'm sending you another email. Open it now." I did as he asked. The message read, "Yesterday, I sent an email as usual. Here's the reply I received." The forwarded message began, "Talking to you on the phone was unbelievable, Mark. I always wondered why you didn't call during these 10 years. Mark's accompanying note mirrored my thoughts. "The imposter told me not to call, giving excuses like Kate being asleep, your work schedule, or my field assignments. It became normal to email instead. But when I didn't get a call about Jake's wedding, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong." Mark and I exchanged uneasy silence, the scale of the deception settling in. "Who do you think it is?" he asked finally. I hesitated before answering. "Carla." Carla, my younger sister, 3 years my junior. She had always been kind, stepping in to help with the kids and manage paperwork when Mark disappeared. But only Carla, or possibly my parents, could have accessed all those photos. My parents, however, weren't tech savvy, and they'd never impersonate me. That left Carla. We ended the call without any real answers. Mark was preparing to leave on another research trip, so there would be no more calls for a while. Over the next 2 weeks, I replayed the past decade in my mind, scrutinizing every memory for clues. How had Mark survived abroad if he was declared dead? Did Carla know Mark was alive all along? Had she colluded with him, or was she acting alone? But if they were working together, why would Mark contact me now? None of it added up. Then Mark called again, his voice urgent. "Nancy, where's the money?" I froze. "What money?" "The living expenses I've been sending every month," Mark said. My blood ran cold. For 10 years, someone had been receiving money from Mark, claiming it was for us. "I sent $4,000 monthly, plus extra for school fees and emergencies," Mark said, his voice heavy with regret. I felt my stomach drop. I didn't receive anything. Mark went quiet, clearly piecing everything together. "I used your old bank account from before we were married. I updated the name to yours after we wed but left the account otherwise untouched." His words set my heart racing. I rushed to the old storage box where I kept my account passbooks. My hands shook as I searched, only to realize the passbook for that specific account was missing. The room spun, and I had to steady myself against the table. The only person who could have taken it was Carla. She often came over to babysit the kids when I wasn't home. $4,000 a month for 10 years, I whispered, the weight of the sum hitting me like a punch. That, combined with extra funds, amounted to a small fortune. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated crime. I'm so sorry, Nancy, Mark said, his voice thick with guilt. I should have realized something was wrong and come back sooner. It's not your fault, I replied, though my voice trembled with suppressed rage. I didn't even notice the missing passbook, but my sister, I couldn't finish the thought. We didn't blame each other. Instead, we focused on what needed to be done. Carla's actions weren't just a personal betrayal, they were criminal. The fog of confusion that had clouded my mind for weeks was gone, replaced by a sharp clarity. I had to confront Carla and hold her accountable, no matter how painful it might be. Memories of Carla helping me with paperwork after Mark's disappearance resurfaced. Back then, I had been so broken that even filling out basic forms had felt impossible. I vaguely remembered signing documents, but I hadn't paid attention to the details. My parents had once told me, "You're still young, Nancy. You might want to remarry someday. It's better to keep things separate from us." Because of that advice, we had created a new family registry for me and the kids. Looking back, it all made sense. Carla must have realized early on that Mark was still alive. Instead of submitting the death certificate, she likely filed a fake divorce decree, creating a new registry that allowed Mark to continue living and working abroad without raising suspicion. Her meticulous planning left me speechless. On the surface, Carla led a modest life, married with one child, living comfortably in the middle class. She wore simple clothes, and her spending seemed reasonable. Her son attended a private school, which was manageable for a family with one child. But where had all that money gone? Determined to uncover the truth, I hired a private investigator. When I explained the situation, the investigator looked stunned. "Is this really true?" they asked. I nodded grimly. The first 10 days of surveillance turned up nothing suspicious. Carla's life appeared as ordinary as ever. "Do you want to extend the investigation?" the investigator asked. "Yes," I replied. "I need answers." It didn't take long for my instincts to be proven right. On the day Mark's usual transfer came through, Carla made her move. The investigators captured her using my old card and passport to withdraw cash from the account. Then she headed straight to a nightclub. Photos showed her entering and leaving the club, clinging to a man on her way out, gazing at him as though reluctant to part. 3 days later, the same man reappeared. Carla met him during the day for a shopping spree, buying him expensive luxury gifts before returning to the nightclub that evening. When the investigator presented the evidence, I felt a wave of nausea. For years, I had thanked Carla for helping me through the darkest days of my life. Now I realized she had deceived me and squandered Mark's hard-earned money. Tears of anger welled in my eyes as I printed the photos. The betrayal was overwhelming. I shared the evidence with Mark, who was even more devastated than I was. "I left you because of my own ambition," he admitted, his voice thick with regret. "But I tried to make sure you didn't struggle financially." He had done his best to support us, and yet we had been robbed, not just of money, but of trust and peace. "I can't believe none of the money reached you," Mark said, his voice filled with anger and regret. "Money can be replaced, but I can't forgive Carla for what she put you through." We both agreed it was time to involve the authorities. Together, we compiled all the evidence and reported Carla's actions to the police. On the day Mark's usual transfer was scheduled, the police were ready. At the bank, an officer approached Carla as she was making a withdrawal. "Ma'am, may I see your ID?" the officer asked, flashing his badge. Carla froze, her face turning pale. She handed over her license with a forced smile. "Here. Now can I go?" "Just one more thing," the officer said calmly. "Can we see the passbook for the account you just withdrew from?" Carla's smile faltered. "Why isn't the ID enough? I've cooperated, haven't I?" The suspect in a series of fraud cases withdraws significant amounts from accounts not under their name, the officer explained. "If the passbook matches, this will be quick." Carla's expression shifted to panic as her eyes darted around the room. "Miss Carla Smith," the officer continued, "isn't that your sister's account?" Everything was out in the open now. Carla's shoulders sagged as she realized she'd been caught. She tried to bolt, but a younger officer restrained her. "We found the passbook and bank card for Nancy Wilson's account," the officer said, holding them up as evidence. From our position nearby, Mark and I stepped forward. The sight of us stunned Carla. "Nancy, Mark, why are you here? Together?" she stammered, her voice a mix of shock and disbelief. "You kept this act going for 10 years, didn't you?" I said, my voice trembling. "I almost admire how thoroughly you deceived us. But it's over now. The lies end here, Carla. It was you sending Jake's wedding photos that made me call Nancy," Mark added, his tone sharp. "That's when we realized everything." Carla's blank expression turned into a smirk. "So I dug my own grave, huh?" She let out a laugh that sent chills through the room. 10 years without anyone noticing. "I guess I got too confident." "Why, Carla?" Mark demanded, his voice cold. "This is a crime. Why would you do this?" "Oh, officer, this is just a misunderstanding," Carla said, her voice dripping with false innocence. "I was running an errand for my sister." "No, Carla. Stop lying," I snapped. "I won't protect you anymore." Carla glared at me, her eyes full of contempt. "You always have everything, Nancy," she spat. "The piano lessons, the private school, the career you wanted, a perfect husband. Everything. It was never fair." I stared at her shocked. "So you weren't after the money? You did this just to hurt me?" "Yes," she screamed. "I wanted to see you struggle, to watch you suffer for once." "But Carla, your grievances don't even make sense," I shouted back. "You quit piano lessons, you failed to pass your exams, and you dropped out of school. How is that my fault?" Her reasons were painfully immature, and I felt a wave of pity. "I even thanked you for helping me when I thought Mark was gone," I said, my voice breaking. "That's right," Carla sneered. "You thought I was your savior while I was laughing behind your back. You really are a fool, Nancy." "That's enough," the officer interrupted, snapping handcuffs onto Carla's wrists. "We'll continue this at the station." As the officers escorted Carla away, she cast one last venomous look at us. Mark and I stood in stunned silence, grappling with the depth of her betrayal. Carla's decade-long deception was finally exposed. She was convicted of fraud and forgery, receiving a lengthy prison sentence. Over 10 years, she had spent more than $700,000 of Mark's money, with little to show for it. My parents disowned her, refusing to visit her in prison. Her husband filed for divorce and moved away with their child, severing all ties. Mark and I decided not to be lenient. Carla needed to repay what she had stolen, even if it took a lifetime. The fake divorce she orchestrated was annulled, and Mark and I were legally married again. Mark's parents offered heartfelt apologies for their part in the ordeal, and for the first time in years, we gathered as a family. We celebrated Jake's wedding and Mark's miraculous return. For Kate, who barely remembered her father, adjusting would take time. But we were patient, ready to rebuild together. Mark retired from international research, taking a prestigious university position as a full professor. "How did you survive?" I asked one evening, still marveling at his return. "It was a miracle," Mark said. "The bear dragged me deep into the forest and knocked me out cold. When I woke up, it was gone, along with my backpack. I stumbled through the woods, injured and disoriented, until I finally found help." He took my hand gently. "I'm here now, Nancy, and I'm never leaving again." I squeezed his hand in return, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you for coming back." Together, we began to reclaim the decade we had lost. I'm Dr. Elena Martinez, though most of my husband's family still calls me the nurse. Not that there's anything wrong with being a nurse. It's a noble profession. But the way they say it, dripping with condescension, makes their intent clear. From the moment I married Michael Romano 5 years ago, his family made it their mission to remind me that I didn't belong in their prestigious medical dynasty. The Romanos had produced 4 generations of renowned surgeons, and to them my work in emergency medicine might as well have been a hobby. "Elena, dear," my mother-in-law Catherine would say at family gatherings, "when are you going to specialize in something more substantial?" She emphasized the last words while sipping her wine, her perfect manicure tapping against the crystal glass. I met Michael during my residency at Central Memorial Hospital. He was the charming neurosurgeon who kept accidentally running into me in the cafeteria. Despite our different backgrounds, him from old money, me from a working-class immigrant family, we connected over our shared passion for medicine. "You're different," He told me on our first date, "You actually care about the patients, not just the procedures." What neither Michael nor his family knew was that I'd been quietly building my own medical empire. Years before meeting Michael, I developed a revolutionary emergency triage AI system. I sold it to a major healthcare company for millions, but kept my involvement anonymous. I wanted to succeed on my own merits, not my bank account. I continued working regular shifts in the ER, investing my wealth strategically in healthcare startups and medical facilities. By the time I met Michael, I owned significant shares in 3 major hospitals on the East Coast. "Elena, could you grab me some more ice?" My sister-in-law, Amanda's voice cut through my thoughts at today's family BBQ. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Amanda, I'm not waiting staff," I replied calmly. She looked up, perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised. "Oh right, sorry. Sometimes I forget you're a doctor now." She made air quotes around the word doctor. Michael, manning the grill nearby, pretended not to hear. That was his way, avoiding conflict by becoming suddenly fascinated with cooking temperatures or his phone screen. Speaking of which, Catherine chimed in, settling into her favorite topic, my inadequacies. "Elena dear, I heard Central Memorial is looking for a new owner. The board's selling majority shares. Shame you're not in a position to participate in such opportunities." I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. If only they knew I was already the anonymous bidder the board had approved last week. "Mom," Michael warned half-heartedly, "let's not talk business today." "Why not?" Amanda jumped in. "We're all family here." "Well, most of us." She smirked in my direction. "Besides, it's not like Elena understands these things. She's busy with her little ER shifts." I noticed my father-in-law, Richard, watching the exchange with poorly concealed amusement. As chief of surgery at Central Memorial, he'd been particularly vocal about keeping the hospital in capable hands. "Actually," I said quietly, "I find hospital administration fascinating." "Oh honey," Catherine's laugh tinkled like ice in a glass. "These matters require extensive business knowledge, years of connections, understanding of complex healthcare systems." She patted my hand condescendingly. "Why don't you help Amanda with the salad?" Before I could respond, Michael's phone buzzed. "Emergency board meeting," he announced, checking the message. "Dad, Amanda, you too." On a Sunday, Amanda complained. She was a dermatologist at Central Memorial, riding on her father's coattails. "Can't they handle anything without us?" "Apparently not," Richard said, already standing. "Catherine will be back in an hour. Elena," he paused, as if searching for something to say. "Perhaps you could clear the tables while we're gone." I watched them pile into their luxury cars, Michael throwing me an apologetic glance. He'd been doing that a lot lately, apologizing with his eyes while staying silent with his voice. What they didn't know was that I called the emergency board meeting. In exactly 47 minutes, they'd learned that their precious hospital had a new owner, one who remembered every dismissive comment, every condescending smile, and every moment they treated me like the help instead of family. "Elena," Catherine called from the patio, "while they're handling important matters, why don't you tell me about your latest ER adventure? Something simple I can understand." I checked my watch and smiled. "Actually, Catherine, I should head to the hospital too. I have some important matters of my own to handle." She laughed, that familiar patronizing sound. "Oh, did they finally put you on a real committee?" "Something like that," I replied, gathering my things. "You'll hear all about it soon." As I drove to Central Memorial, I thought about the journey that led me here. My parents have immigrated with nothing but hope and determination. They'd worked multiple jobs to put me through medical school, teaching me that true worth isn't in titles or family names, but in how you treat people. I pulled into my reserved parking space, the one marked reserved for hospital administration, that I'd been secretly using for weeks. In my rearview mirror, I saw Richard's Mercedes pull in, followed by Amanda's Range Rover and Michael's BMW. The time for hiding was over. I straightened my blazer, checked my reflection, and headed for the boardroom. Years of dismissal and degradation were about to end in one spectacular moment of revelation. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Mr. Davidson, the board chairman. "I'm ready." The response came immediately. "Board is assembled. Your stage is set, Dr. Martinez." Taking a deep breath, I walked toward the boardroom, my heels clicking purposefully on the polished floor. Through the glass walls, I could see them all settling into their seats, my husband's family sitting together, as always. None of them noticed me standing outside. They never did. But they were about to. The boardroom fell silent as Mr. Davidson stood at the head of the table. Through the glass, I watched my in-laws exchange confident glances. They had no idea what was coming. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Mr. Davidson began, his voice carrying the weight of 2 months of careful planning. "As you know, Central Memorial has been seeking new ownership. Today, I'm pleased to announce that the board has unanimously approved a buyer." Richard straightened in his chair. "Charles, I thought we agreed to postpone any decisions until—" "The decision has been made, Dr. Romano," Mr. Davidson cut in smoothly. "In fact, the new owner is here to address the board." That was my cue. I pushed open the heavy glass doors and walked in. The look of confusion on their faces was priceless. "Elena?" Michael half rose from his chair. "What are you doing here? This is a confidential meeting." Catherine's perfectly lined lips curved into a dismissive smile. "Dear, perhaps you misunderstood. This is an executive board meeting, not an ER consultation." "No misunderstanding, Catherine." I moved to stand beside Mr. Davidson. "I'm exactly where I should be." Amanda snorted. "What? Did they need a nurse's perspective?" Mr. Davidson cleared his throat. "Allow me to introduce Dr. Elena Martinez, the new majority shareholder and owner of Central Memorial Hospital." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's face turned an alarming shade of red. Amanda's mouth hung open, her carefully applied lipstick suddenly seeming garish. And Michael, my husband, stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Catherine recovered first. "This is absurd. Charles, surely you can't be serious. She's just a doctor?" I supplied. "An immigrant's daughter, or perhaps you were going to say the help." "Elena," Richard's voice held a warning tone. "Whatever game you're playing." "This isn't a game, Richard." I picked up the folder Mr. Davidson handed me. "These are the transfer documents already approved by the board. I now own 67% of Central Memorial's shares." "Impossible," Amanda sputtered. "You couldn't afford." "Actually," I interrupted, "I could. You see, while you were all busy reminding me of my place, I was building something of my own. That Triage AI system the hospital implemented last year, the one that reduced ER wait times by 40%, I developed that. Sold it for 8 figures. Michael's face paled. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference?" I met his eyes. "Would you have stood up for me at family dinners? Defended me when your sister called me the help? When your mother suggested I take serving courses to be more useful at family gatherings?" The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Most of them had witnessed the Romano family's treatment of me over the years. "As of today," I continued, "there will be changes. First, all hiring and promotion decisions will be based on merit, not family connections." I looked pointedly at Amanda, who shrank in her seat. "You can't do this." Catherine stood up, her voice shrill. "This hospital has been in our family's sphere for generations." "Exactly," I smiled. "And that's the problem. Central Memorial has been running on nepotism instead of merit. Our patient satisfaction scores have dropped 15% in the past 3 years. Staff turnover in non-Romano supervised departments is twice the national average." I pulled out another document, which brings me to my next point. "Richard, your position as chief of surgery is under review." "Under review?" He slammed his hand on the table. "I built this department, and under your leadership, surgical error rates have increased by 12%. Coincidentally, that increase began when you started fast-tracking Amanda's friends into residency positions." Amanda's face flushed. "You vindictive bit." "Dr. Romano," Mr. Davidson cut in sharply, "remember where you are." I continued as if there hadn't been an interruption. "All current positions will be evaluated based on performance metrics. Those who meet our new standards will keep their roles. Those who don't—" I let the sentence hang. Michael finally found his voice. "Elena, these are your in-laws. Your family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Let's talk about family, Michael. Last Christmas, your mother seated me at the children's table because medical professionals of my status shouldn't mix with their surgeon guests. Last month, your sister told the new residents I was the cleaning staff. And you?" I met his gaze. "You watched it all and said nothing." The boardroom was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. Dr. Martinez, one of the board members, spoke up. What changes should we expect? I straightened my spine. Central Memorial will become a hospital where every employee is valued based on their contributions, not their last name. Where patients receive care from the most qualified professionals, not just the best connected ones. Where innovation is rewarded, regardless of who suggests it. Richard stood up, his chair scraping loudly. This is ridiculous. I'll fight this. You're welcome to try, I replied calmly. But I should mention, I've been documenting everything. Every discriminatory comment, every questionable hiring decision, every patient complaint that was swept under the rug. Would you like that information to become public? He sank back into his chair. Catherine's voice turned sugary sweet. Alana, dear, surely we can discuss this as a family, perhaps over dinner. I'm sure we can come to an understanding. The time for family discussions was years ago, Catherine. Now it's just business. I turned to Mr. Davidson. Please distribute the new organizational charts and policy documents. As papers were passed around, I watched my in-laws' faces. Amanda was texting furiously, probably calling her lawyer. Richard stared at the documents like they might bite him. Catherine's perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. And Michael, my husband, sat there, looking lost, finally understanding what his silence had cost him. One more thing, I added. Effective immediately, all Romano family members will report directly to the board, not to each other. No more covering up mistakes, no more preferential treatment. This is how you repay us. Catherine's voice cracked. After we welcomed you into our family, I met her gaze steadily. No, Catherine. This is how I fix a broken system. How I ensure that other talented professionals don't face the discrimination I did. How I make sure patients get the best care, not just care from the right family. The meeting is adjourned, Mr. Davidson announced. Dr. Martinez, would you like to address the staff? Yes, I gathered my papers. I believe it's time they met their new boss properly. As the board members filed out, Michael approached me. Elena, we need to talk about this. Yes, we do, I agreed. But not here. Not now. Right now, I have a hospital to run. I walked out of the boardroom, leaving my stunned in-laws behind. The click of my heels echoed through the corridor, each step taking me further from the person they thought I was and closer to the leader I'd become. Through the glass walls, I could see Catherine crying into her designer handkerchief, Richard making angry phone calls, and Amanda still furiously texting. But for the first time since I'd married into their family, their drama wasn't my concern. I had work to do. The next few weeks at Central Memorial were a whirlwind of change. Word of the new ownership spread quickly, along with stories of the dramatic board meeting. I heard whispers in the hallways, saw surprised looks from staff who had previously ignored me, and received countless emails from employees sharing their own experiences of discrimination. I moved into the CEO's office but kept my regular ER shifts. Unlike my predecessors, I believed hospital administration should understand frontline operations. One morning, while reviewing department reports, my assistant buzzed in. Dr. Martinez? Mrs. Romano is here to see you. I knew this confrontation was coming. Send her in. Catherine swept into my office, looking immaculate as always, but the designer bags under her eyes betrayed her stress. Elena, she began, smoothing her skirt as she sat down uninvited. We need to discuss this situation. What situation will that be? I continued reviewing reports. Don't play coy. You're destroying our family. Richard hasn't slept in days. Amanda's reputation is ruined, and Michael. Her voice cracked slightly. He's staying at a hotel. I finally looked up. Catherine, did you ever consider that you destroyed this family long ago? When you decided some people were worthy of respect and others weren't? We gave you everything, she snapped. A place in our family, connections, opportunities. No, I cut her off. You gave me conditions, rules, expectations to fail. You never once saw me as family. I was the help who somehow trapped your son. Because you lied. All this time, hiding your wealth, pretending to be something you're not. I never lied, I corrected her. I just didn't announce my success. I wanted to be accepted for who I was, not what I had. And now, she demanded, is this your revenge? Taking over our hospital? This isn't revenge, Catherine. It's reform. Have you seen our patient satisfaction scores this week? Up 22%. Staff morale? Improved 35%. Turns out, when you hire based on merit instead of last names, things actually work better. She shifted uncomfortably. Richard is considering legal action. For what? I bought the shares legally. The board approved everything. Or is he planning to sue because I'm enforcing standard medical protocols? I handed her a folder. Here's your husband's surgical error rate report. Would he like this to become public? Catherine's hands trembled as she took the folder. What do you want? I want what I've always wanted, to run an excellent hospital and be respected for my work. I leaned back. The question is, what do you want? To fight a losing battle, or to adapt and maintain your position? What position? You're reviewing all our roles. Yes, based on merit. If you meet the standards, you keep your jobs. Simple as that. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Can we talk? Catherine noticed my expression change. Is that my son? Elena, please. Whatever issues you have with us, don't punish him. Punish him? I laughed softly. Catherine, your son punished himself. Every time he stayed silent, every time he chose comfort over courage, he damaged our marriage. This isn't about punishment. It's about consequences. After Catherine left, I found myself thinking about Michael. We hadn't spoken properly since the board meeting. He'd moved out, saying he needed space to think. That evening, as I was leaving the hospital, I found him waiting by my car. Nice parking spot, he said quietly. It came with the job. Elena. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Why did he tell me? Would it have changed anything? I asked. Would you have stood up to your family? Found your voice? I was trying to keep the peace. No, Michael, you were choosing the easy path, just like you always did. He stepped closer. I love you. Love isn't enough, I replied. Respect, support, courage, those matter too. Where were those when your sister called me the help? When your mother seated me with the children? When your father dismissed my medical opinions? I can change, he whispered. Maybe you can, but not for me. Not for us. I unlocked my car. Change because you want to be better, Michael. Because you're tired of being a coward. Over the next few months, Central Memorial transformed. Richard stepped down as chief of surgery, replaced by a brilliant surgeon from Johns Hopkins. Amanda transferred to a private practice, unable to meet the new performance standards. Catherine stopped attending hospital functions. Michael filed for divorce. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, but we both knew the truth. The difference was I finally reconciled with my worth. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during Central Memorial's annual gala. The hospital had just been ranked among the top 10 in the country. Success in healthcare isn't about family names or traditions, I told the assembled crowd. It's about dedication, innovation, and putting patients first. Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their title or background. In the audience, I spotted Catherine and Richard. They'd finally accepted the new reality, choosing to adapt rather than fight. Michael had moved to Boston, starting fresh. Amanda had found success in her private practice, where her name carried less weight but her work spoke for itself. As for me, I expanded my healthcare network, acquiring 2 more hospitals and implementing the same merit-based systems. My parents attended the gala as guests of honor, their proud smiles worth more than any hospital empire. Later that night, alone in my office, I found an old family photo from my first Christmas with the Romanos. In it, I sat apart from the group, trying to smile while they clustered together. I pinned it to my bulletin board, not as a reminder of pain, but as a testament to growth. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in destroying others, but in building yourself up so high that their opinions no longer matter. The following week, during my regular ER shift, a young resident approached me. Dr. Martinez? She seemed nervous. I have an idea for improving our triage system. Tell me more. I smiled, remembering how it felt to be dismissed. Really? Her eyes lit up. But I'm just a first-year resident. There's no such thing as just anything here, I told her. At Central Memorial, we value ideas, not titles. As I listened to her proposal, I realized that true success isn't measured in wealth or power, but in the changes we inspire in others. Every time someone feels valued for their work, heard for their ideas, or respected for their contributions, that's a victory. The hospital continues to thrive, not because of a family name, but because of the dedicated professionals who now know their worth isn't determined by their connections, but by their contributions. And me, I found something better than revenge. I found purpose. Sometimes the best response to those who try to diminish you isn't to prove them wrong. It's to rise so high that their opinions become irrelevant. That's not just success. That's justice. My parents skipped my wedding because I married before my perfect sister. Now, their image of a perfect family is finally crumbling. After being together for 4 years, I 32F, got married 8 months ago. Everyone attended the wedding except for my parents and my sister, Mullen, 30F. While my parents' decision to skip the event was shocking, I wasn't entirely surprised by Mullen's absence. We've never gotten along. Looking back, I should have anticipated their behavior, given our family dynamics. Let me give you some background. My parents have always favored my sister. To some extent, I can't blame them. Mullen has excelled at nearly everything since childhood. She commanded attention wherever she went. As soon as she could walk, she dominated spelling bees, science fairs, and talent shows. In high school, she was class president, valedictorian, and even prom queen. Tall, slender, and stunning, she pursued modeling in college alongside her business degree. She got her first professional modeling gig as a sophomore, and my parents threw a lavish party to celebrate. Her first professional headshot still hangs above our living room fireplace. Meanwhile, the same year, I graduated with a degree in computer science. My parents' reaction, a mumbled "well done" before they turned their focus back to Mullen's next photo shoot. Mullen continued to climb the corporate ladder after college. By 30, she had a corner office, a company car, and a senior executive position at a prominent firm. In contrast, I work as a mid-level software developer, a role I'm proud of but one that doesn't inspire parental boasting. Growing up, I was also compared unfavorably to Mullen in appearance. I'm shorter and bigger than her, and my mother constantly reminded me of it. She signed me up for workout classes I didn't want, put me on endless diets, and often said, "Mullen never struggles with her weight," or "You could look as nice as your sister if you just put in more effort." By high school, I had learned to ignore the remarks, but they still stung. Over the years, I came to terms with the fact that my parents didn't value my accomplishments as much as Mullen's. I tried everything to win their approval, taking their recommended classes, joining clubs they encourage, even trying modeling briefly. That was a disaster Mullen loves to remind me of. Eventually, I gave up trying. By my mid-20s, I focused on building a life I could be proud of, growing professionally, forming meaningful relationships, and surrounding myself with people who appreciated me for who I was. This shift improved my emotional well-being, though I kept interactions with my parents superficial to avoid conflict. During family gatherings, I would smile and nod while they raved about Mullen's latest job, boyfriend, or vacation. They didn't notice my emotional distance as they were too preoccupied with her achievements. Then I met my husband. We connected at a tech conference through a mutual friend. Unlike my family, he truly saw me, appreciating my humor, my coding skills, and even my body. From the start, he never once compared me to anyone else. 4 years later, he proposed while we were at home enjoying takeout and our favorite TV show. It was perfect. When I told my parents about our engagement, their reaction was a warning sign. They didn't congratulate me. My mom's response, silence, followed by, "Are you sure you're ready? Maybe you should work on your appearance before the wedding." My dad said little, and at the engagement party, they spent most of their time huddled over my mom's phone. Later, my husband told me he overheard them talking to Mullen, who was crying. He caught snippets about how this wasn't the plan and how they never thought Rebecca would get married first. Planning the wedding was tough. My mom, who had already made Pinterest boards for Mullen's future wedding, despite Mullen being single, showed little interest in helping me. When I picked a simple yet stunning A-line gown that made me feel beautiful, her only comment was, "It's practical and suits your figure." My future mother-in-law stepped up, helping me with most of the preparations. My husband and I carefully curated the guest list, ensuring no one was left out. Invitations went out electronically and on paper, but I wasn't holding my breath for my parents or Mullen to attend. I was certain my parents received their invitations since the electronic versions included red receipts. I followed up with multiple calls, texts, and emails when I realized they hadn't RSVP'd. Their responses were vague at best, claims of being too busy and needing to check their schedules. Eventually, I had to stop worrying and focus on the wedding preparations. My in-laws stepped in to help, assisting with everything from seating arrangements to floral designs. Even at the lovely bridal shower hosted by my husband's sister, the absence of my own family was glaring, though no one mentioned it. Despite my parents not being there, the wedding day was beautiful. We held a simple morning ceremony in a garden, followed by a laid-back afternoon celebration. Friends and family kept telling us how happy and in love we looked, but there were moments when their absence felt like a physical ache, seeing the empty front row seats or not having a father-daughter dance. After the honeymoon, I reached out to my parents for answers. They claimed they were deeply hurt because they never received a formal invitation. When I finally got them on the phone, my mother launched into a tirade, accusing me of being careless and lamenting how she had always dreamed of helping plan her daughter's weddings. She couldn't understand why I would exclude them from such an important event. Confused, I double-checked our records during the call. Both the electronic and physical invitations had been sent, and the delivery of the paper invites was confirmed. I didn't confront them about what felt like blatant gaslighting. Instead, I apologized for any supposed oversight and ended the conversation. Later, my husband pointed out several red flags from the engagement and wedding planning stages. He reminded me of how my parents seemed surprised, not happy, when we announced our engagement. He noted how they made excuses to avoid helping with the preparations. He hadn't brought it up before to spare me additional stress. But looking back, it was clear. The idea of their less successful daughter marrying before their beloved Mullen was too much for them to bear. Their behavior only reinforced what I had long suspected but resisted acknowledging. I could never compete with Mullen in their eyes. Even on my wedding day, a moment meant to celebrate love and new beginnings, they turned it into another battlefield in their relentless quest to uphold their perfect family image, with Mullen at the center. Recently, I learned from other relatives that Mullen is now engaged after dating someone for just a year. My parents are ecstatic, eagerly planning an extravagant wedding. They've been boasting about booking luxury venues and gowns, and my mother is even accompanying Mullen to private fittings at upscale boutiques, the kind of mother-daughter experiences I was denied. Interestingly, many relatives are refusing to attend Mullen's engagement party or wedding. My parents' actions during my wedding have become a topic of discussion within the family. When relatives ask why my parents didn't attend my wedding, I simply share the truth. They couldn't handle me marrying before Mullen. I stick to the facts, avoiding embellishment or seeking sympathy. A few days ago, my parents accused me of deliberately sabotaging Mullen's wedding. They claimed I was spreading lies out of jealousy over her lavish plans. The truth is, I've only been honest about what happened. If their actions make them look bad, that's on them. Instead of blaming me, they should reflect on their behavior. As these dynamics unfold, maintaining even a superficial relationship with my parents feels increasingly impossible. Their absence at my wedding was painful, but it pales in comparison to the realization that I never had the loving, supportive parents I always wished for. Now I'm focusing on building a life with someone who truly values me for who I am. I'll keep you updated if anything significant changes. Since my last post 2 weeks ago, a lot has happened. I finally decided to confront my parents face-to-face about their actions at my wedding and their accusations that I had ruined Mullen's special day. Encouraged by your supportive comments, I realized it was time to lay everything out in the open. The confrontation began with them texting me, lamenting their tarnished family history. During a subsequent phone call, they quickly turned to accusations, claiming I was jealous of Mullen and that I had orchestrated everything to spite her. For the first time in my life, I didn't defend myself. Instead, I agreed with them, but not in the way they expected. "You're right," I said. "I am envious, not of Mullen's career, accomplishments, or appearance. I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've always shown her, support you never even attempted to give me." There was a stunned silence on the line before my mother dismissed my words as an exaggeration, insisting they had always treated us equally. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed emotions flooded out as I laid bare every slight and hurt. I reminded them how Mullen's modeling callback had overshadowed my high school graduation dinner. I spoke about the disparity in how they celebrated her achievements versus mine, like her prom dress costing more than a year's worth of my college textbooks. I told them how humiliating it was to watch them obsess over Mullen's hypothetical wedding for years, only to show zero interest in mine. Finally, I revealed the pain of seeing their empty seats at my wedding, and how my mother-in-law had to step in to help with everything they neglected. Their response was exactly what I should have expected. Instead of addressing my concerns, they flipped the blame onto me. "Why didn't you speak up sooner if you felt this way?" my mother demanded, as though I hadn't tried for years to voice my feelings. My father accused me of being unjust and spiteful for sharing my emotions with family members, while my mother dropped the ultimate bombshell. "We never imagined you'd go to such lengths to ruin Mullen's wedding out of spite, but we always knew you were insecure about her success. This isn't how we raised you." In that moment, it became crystal clear. They weren't even listening to me. Their focus wasn't on my pain, but on Mullen's impending nuptials and how this conflict might affect her. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to fix the situation or placate them. Instead, I replied with unflinching honesty. "You're right about one thing. You did raise me to believe I would never measure up, to know that Mullen's accomplishments would always matter more, and that maintaining your perfect family image was more important than my feelings. But you also taught me something you didn't intend. I deserve better than this." There was a long silence before my father finally spoke in a calm, detached tone. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending we're bad parents since you've already made up your mind. Clearly, you enjoy making us suffer. Family is supposed to work through these things together, but it's obvious you've chosen a different path." My mother added the final blow. "Maybe you just couldn't handle not being the center of attention. We've always treated you fairly, Rebecca. If you chose to play the victim, that's not our fault." I didn't argue. What would be the point? They had just validated everything I said without even realizing it. I calmly said goodbye and hung up. To my surprise, I felt relief afterward. The tears I shed were not of heartbreak but liberation. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without guilt or self-doubt. Later, as I sat on the back porch watching the sunset, my husband joined me and took my hand. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked after a long pause. "No," he said gently, squeezing my hand. "But you have, and that's what matters." He was right. The desperate girl who once craved her parents' approval was gone. I no longer needed their validation to feel whole. Acknowledging that my parents will never be the loving, supportive figures I wished for is painful, but not as painful as holding on to false hope. I've let go. For the first time, I don't care what happens with Mullen's wedding or the family drama surrounding it. I've said my piece. Now they have to live with the consequences of their actions. Oddly enough, I feel lighter, as if a lifelong burden has been lifted. It's not the happy ending I wanted, but it's the closure I needed. I assumed that would be the end of it, but a few hours later, my husband called me at work, laughing so hard he could barely speak. It turned out Mullen, unable to reach me directly, had somehow obtained his personal number, likely through a mutual acquaintance, and sent him a series of texts. These messages meticulously outlined her take on why our sisterly relationship had always been strained. Her initial message began with a professional tone. "As Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being, I feel compelled to reach out." But it didn't take long for her true motivations to shine through. She informed my husband that he had a responsibility to help me behave in a more suitable manner as the new man in my life. The text became increasingly condescending, suggesting that family dynamics are complex and implying that I, due to my sensitivity, might lack the capacity to understand the bigger picture. She then urged him to assist Rebecca in seeing reason before I supposedly caused irreparable damage to family relationships. The most audacious part of her message came next. "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members, like myself, could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects and by extension yours." My husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, found her presumptions laughable. "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" he said later. He saw right through her attempt to manipulate him by dangling social connections and networking opportunities. That evening, we went through her messages together. Instead of feeling offended or upset, we laughed. Seeing her manipulative tactics fail so spectacularly, especially when aimed at someone completely immune to them, was surprisingly freeing. This interaction revealed something fundamental about Mullen. Despite her achievements, she remains the same insecure person she was in high school. Back then, she'd resort to turning my friends against me when direct bullying didn't work. Different decade, same tactics. Her attempt to manipulate my husband was particularly revealing. When her direct approach to control me failed, she shifted to using him against me, a strategy that had worked on others in the past. This time, though, it backfired. My husband's response was perfect. "Thank you for your concern about Rebecca's well-being. As her husband, my focus is on supporting her happiness, not managing her behavior. I think it's best if you direct any future concerns to Rebecca directly. Have a nice day." Mullen wasn't pleased with this response. She sent one final text. "I see she's poisoned you against the family too. Don't say I didn't try to help when this all blows up in your faces." Ironically, her help only strengthened my resolve to distance myself from my family's toxic dynamics. Her inability to control the narrative and the clear rejection of her manipulation was both amusing and liberating. My husband and I spent the evening joking about her texts and planning a weekend getaway instead of dwelling on the drama. This incident made me realize that true family isn't about maintaining facades or dictating narratives. It's about love, laughter, and support. When someone, family or not, tries to manipulate you, you're better off keeping your distance. I'm more certain than ever that staying out of Mullen's wedding drama is the right choice. Instead of being drawn into my family's endless power struggles, my husband and I are focusing on building our own happiness. Success, I've learned, isn't about impressing others. It's about living authentically, making decisions that reflect your values, and surrounding yourself with people who uplift you. By that measure, I've never felt more successful. I never imagined I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Mary, and I'm a retired widow living on a modest pension of $600 a month since my husband Brian passed away. Life had already been challenging, but when my eldest son Tom and his wife Julia entered the picture, things took an unexpected turn. It all started when Tom and Julia moved into my house uninvited. They didn't ask for permission or offer any explanation. They simply arrived. My younger son Sam, who lived nearby with his family, had previously offered me a place to stay out of concern after Brian's death. Sam knew Tom well. His older brother had always been unreliable, indecisive, and resistant to taking responsibility. Despite this, I allowed Tom and Julia to stay, hoping things might work out. Tom had always been a source of worry for Brian and me. As our firstborn, we'd spoiled him, assuming he'd grow into a dependable adult. Instead, he grew more irresponsible. Even as an adult, he bounced between low-paying jobs and refused to contribute financially while living under our roof. "I have my own expenses," he'd say dismissively. "I'll have more to give soon. Just wait." But the money never came, and his excuses wore thin. When Tom announced his engagement to Julia, I hoped she might bring some balance to his life. Instead, she only amplified his entitlement. From the moment I met her, I could sense her arrogance. Before even introducing herself, she began touring the house as if she already owned it. "This place is spacious and nice," she commented, her eyes scanning the rooms. "Are you planning to live here with us?" I asked cautiously. Julia frowned, her tone laced with condescension. "No, Tom and I will live here alone. You and Brian should move out." Her audacity left me speechless. This was the home Brian and I had built together, yet she expected us to leave to accommodate her whims. When Brian confronted them, Julia boldly suggested, "It would be a nice wedding gift if you gave us this house. It's too luxurious for you anyway." Brian's anger was palpable. "This is our home," he declared. "If you can't respect that, you need to leave." After their disrespectful visit, Brian refused to approve of the marriage. Still, Tom seemed powerless to stand up to Julia. When I asked him if he seriously intended to marry her, he shrugged. "I didn't know she'd say that," he muttered, his usual indecisiveness on full display. Despite Brian's objections, we couldn't stop two adults from getting married. At the wedding planning meeting, Julia's entitlement reared its head again. She demanded we move out, hoping to claim the house for herself and Tom. But Julia's father, thankfully a voice of reason, shut her down. "You need to find your own place," he said firmly. "It's not right to expect them to leave their home." "Dad, don't interfere," Julia snapped. "I want to live in that house." But her father stood his ground, and the discussion ended with Julia's tantrum unresolved. Tom and Julia ultimately moved out, though not by choice. A month later, I received a call from Tom. His tone was hesitant. Mom, we made a mistake. The tables had turned, and it was Tom and Julia who now regretted cutting ties. I apologize for my daughter's behavior, Julia's mother said, looking genuinely regretful. Her words shed light on why Julia had grown so spoiled and entitled. Brian, too, reflected on our own mistakes, realizing that spoiling Tom had left him dependent and weak. Once the housing issue was resolved, we finally celebrated Tom and Julia's wedding. But Brian never warmed up to her. Don't worry so much. You miss Sam, don't you? I asked Brian one day. He quickly denied it, but I knew better. I didn't like Julia either, but since we weren't living together, I decided to tolerate her for Tom's sake. Julia rarely visited, even though she and Tom lived nearby. She didn't come for holidays, leaving our home feeling lonely at times. Thankfully, Sam and his family visited often, bringing light and warmth into our lives. Not long after, Sam announced his engagement and introduced us to his fiancée, Emily. She was polite and graceful, instantly winning us over. We should tell Tom, I suggested to Brian. He lives nearby, and maybe he can come alone. Brian looked skeptical but agreed. Just don't invite Julia. I didn't want to invite Julia either, but propriety dictated that she should know. Still, I was wary of her unpredictable behavior. When I told Tom about the meeting, he seemed happy and agreed to come. Just come by yourself, I added. Julia can meet Emily another time. Got it. I won't tell Julia, Tom assured me, and I felt relieved. But my relief was short-lived. On the day of the meeting, Julia showed up at our door uninvited, her expression sour. Excluding me as mean, she snapped, I'm coming as Tom's wife. Without waiting for an invitation, she barged in and acted rudely toward Emily. Why is she here? I asked Tom in frustration. She saw it marked on the calendar, he muttered awkwardly. I was exasperated by his carelessness, but hoped Julia would behave. My hopes were soon dashed. This house isn't meant for Sam and his wife after they marry. It's meant for us, Julia declared smugly. Emily, to her credit, stayed calm. Oh, I see, she said evenly. I'll leave that up to you. While I bristled with anger, Emily remained composed, which seemed to embolden Julia. I'll take the house, Julia continued, but you'll handle your parents' care. I'm not doing it. Fed up, I finally snapped. Julia, I didn't invite you here today. If you don't like us, you should just leave. Julia shot me a disdainful look before storming out, with Tom following her like a shadow, offering no apology. I turned to Emily, deeply embarrassed. I'm so sorry for her behavior. Don't worry about it, Emily replied with a kind smile. Her maturity stood in stark contrast to Julia's pettiness. Tom left without congratulating Sam or even acknowledging the occasion. Afterward, I apologized to Sam and Emily again, explaining what living with Tom and Julia had been like. They were both shocked. I knew Julia was difficult, Sam said, but I didn't realize it was this bad. Over time, our bond with Sam and his family deepened, while our relationship with Tom and Julia became increasingly strained. I thought Tom would reach out if he ever faced serious problems, but then Brian suddenly collapsed at home. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Sam came immediately with Emily and their child, their concern evident. He's stable now, but it's serious, I said. Sam urged me to stay positive. He'll be okay, Mom. When Sam asked if I'd informed Tom, I admitted that I had, but Tom hadn't come. Is Julia stopping him? Sam wondered. I doubted it, but when I called Tom again, I heard something outrageous. When Dad dies, do I have to handle the funeral? Tom asked bluntly. I'd rather Sam do it. Furious, I demanded he come to the hospital immediately, but Julia took over the call. If your husband dies, what happens to the house? Will Tom inherit it? She asked, her tone disturbingly cheerful. Don't say such heartless things, I snapped. Come to the hospital now. He's probably not going to make it, right? I need to look good for the funeral, so I'm going to the salon, Julia replied casually. I was livid but still hoped Tom would come. He didn't. Despite multiple calls, he stayed away, leaving me heartbroken. Brian pulled through, but his condition remained fragile. I decided to quit my freelance illustration job to care for him full-time. Sam and Emily offered their support. Let me help, Emily said kindly. Don't overwork yourself. I appreciated her offer, but knew she had her own family to care for. Meanwhile, Tom and Julia remained absent, though Julia did call once to ask, how much longer is he planning to live? Wasn't he supposed to be on the brink? Her cruelty stunned me. He's still in critical condition. Show some respect and visit him. I shouted before she hung up. Tom called later, but only to ask about the inheritance. How much does Dad have? The house isn't in his name, right? Are you waiting for your father to die just to claim his money? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Tom seemed oblivious to the pain he was causing, continuing to press about the estate. Each word from him cut deeper, leaving me wondering how my own son could become so heartless. After I hung up, Tom called Sam next, pestering him about Dad's estate. Tom kept demanding details about the inheritance. Sam told me later. I told him I didn't know, and he got mad and hung up. I knew Tom had always been unreliable, but this level of selfishness was shocking. Sam added, I think he's confused about what Mom inherited from Grandpa. Tom thinks Dad had a big inheritance. Hearing this made me feel even worse. My father had been well off, and when he passed, I inherited a substantial amount. Brian had warned me never to tell Tom how much I'd received, fearing it would lead to greed and entitlement. Somehow, a relative had spread a rumor that Brian, not me, had inherited the fortune. I remembered a conversation from years ago when Tom, still in college, had said, when Dad's inheritance comes, I only want cash. You can keep the house. Brian had scolded him, calling it disrespectful. Sam had overheard but dismissed it as typical youthful ignorance. Now, with Julia in the picture, her influence seemed to have fueled Tom's fixation on the house. Do you think Tom is in financial trouble? I asked Sam one day. Is that why he's so obsessed with the inheritance? I'm not sure, Sam replied, but Julia's spending habits are out of control. She's always shopping and they rely on takeout for meals. It's not cheap. His words made me even more anxious. I considered confronting Tom, but before I could, Brian's condition worsened and he became critical. In the chaos, I forgot to call Tom, but Sam informed him. To my dismay, Tom and Julia finally appeared at the hospital with nothing but cruelty to offer. Julia's first words were biting. He's not going to make it this time, right? Don't get your hopes up. I glared at her, stunned. Tom muttered something equally inconsiderate. Dad didn't leave a will, did he? If I'm cut out of the inheritance, I'll be furious. That was the final straw. You're not needed here, I said sharply. Go home now. They both looked annoyed but left, laughing as they went. We'll go prepare clothes for the funeral, Julia quipped. My heart burned with anger, but I focused on Brian, hoping against hope he would pull through. Despite my prayers, Brian passed away. The days following his death were a blur. Sam and his wife took over the funeral arrangements, allowing me to stay by Brian's side until the end. When the funeral concluded, I thanked Sam and his wife for everything they'd done. Tom, on the other hand, didn't even attend. When I called him about it, he simply said, "Handle it," and hung up. Later, Sam's wife confided, the oldest son didn't come to his own father's funeral. I'm so sorry. Don't worry about him, I said, trying to sound resolute. I have you and Sam. That's more than enough. I resolved to cut ties with Tom and Julia, but before I could, they showed up at the house unannounced, bags in hand. We'll be staying here from now on, Julia announced smugly. Move Dad's things out. Tom inherited this house, so it's not a problem. It's safer for you to live with us, right? I was speechless. You can't just move in like this. I never agreed to live together. Despite my protests, they moved their belongings in. Sam has no say in this, Julia declared. We canceled our old lease and have nowhere else to go. Sam came over, furious, and tried reasoning with Tom, but it was pointless. Julia always twisted every conversation to suit her narrative. Exhausted, I pulled Sam aside. I'll endure this for a bit while I sort out your dad's belongings. Then, I'll move in with you. You're always welcome, Mom, Sam reassured me. Don't hesitate to come anytime. Living with Tom and Julia turned out to be worse than I had imagined. Julia refused to help with housework, and even Tom stopped contributing. They pay for nothing, and when I brought it up, Julia snapped. Why should we pay rent? You're living off your husband's house. You should cover the expenses. She even insisted on controlling my pension, believing I received much more than I did. Julia's extravagant shopping and daily outings hinted at financial trouble. But when I mentioned that my monthly pension was only $600, she turned red with anger. Don't say such ridiculous things, she snapped. Are you accusing me of infidelity? I had said it jokingly, but her overreaction was telling. Feeling uneasy, I visited Sam to share everything. It's ridiculous for you to pay their way, Sam said firmly. Just move in with us. Sam then revealed something shocking. I saw someone who looked like Julia with another man in a car. I thought it was nothing, but maybe it wasn't. We were all stunned. While I was ready to leave the house anytime, we decided to investigate Julia further before taking the next step. While I prepared for my move, Julia continued her daily outings, blissfully unaware of my plans. One day, she approached me with an outlandish demand. Give me some spending money, Mary, she said casually. I'm taking care of you, so you should give me an allowance. I'm already paying for everything, I replied, trying to stay calm. There's nothing left to give. Julia scoffed, clearly convinced I was hiding money because of my pension. Don't be stingy. You have enough. I considered revealing the actual amount of my pension but decided against it, knowing they'd only demand more if they knew the truth. Tom, as usual, showed no interest when I mentioned Julia's request. He had lost all focus on inheritance matters since moving in. Sam and I had been working quietly to ensure the estate was divided according to the law. With Sam's help, we prepared the necessary inheritance documents, which only required Tom's signature. As Tom given up on the estate, Sam wondered aloud. Tom assumes everything is already settled, I said. He thinks the house is his, so he doesn't care about the rest. When I asked Tom to sign the documents, he nodded indifferently, trusting me to handle everything. I finalized the paperwork while Julia was out, ensuring that all assets were appropriately transferred. Tom signed without reading a word, assuming it simply confirmed his ownership of the house. Watching him sign so carelessly made me worry about his susceptibility to being deceived in the future. After filing the documents, I returned home to an unexpected confrontation. Julia was back early, and her tone was sharp. Mary, do you only get $600 a month from your pension? I thought you received more. Stunned, I turned to find Tom holding my bank book. I wanted to know how much you get, he said matter-of-factly. So I checked your room. Why is it so empty? Decluttering, I replied curtly, snatching the bank book from his hands. Even if you're my son, going through my belongings is unacceptable. Return that to me now. Julia crossed her arms, looking disappointed. If it's only $600, I don't want it. I thought you were wealthier. We've been tricked. Their entitlement was staggering. Fine, Julia declared. We don't need to live with a mother who only gets $600. We'll cut ties. I laughed at their absurdity. Are you sure about that? You might regret it. Julia narrowed her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see, I said, grabbing my pre-packed bags and leaving for Sam's house. Sam and his wife burst out laughing when I shared what had happened. Tom's always been careless, Sam said, shaking his head. But I didn't think Julia would be fooled so easily. How will they manage now? You paid all the bills. It's not my problem anymore, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I'm just glad I had Tom sign those papers. A month of peace passed in Sam's home, filled with laughter and warmth. But the calm was broken when Tom and Julia showed up unannounced, their frustration palpable. Why are we getting rent bills? Julia demanded. This house is supposed to be ours, isn't it? Where's the inheritance? The bills are piling up and our phones got cut off. Tom added angrily. Give us Dad's money. I remained calm. The inheritance was deposited into your account. You signed the papers, remember? Why are you here after saying you wanted to cut ties? Sam handed Tom a copy of the signed documents. You agreed to everything. The money was transferred to your account the next day. Tom's face paled as he read the papers. I remember signing and giving my account number. But where's the money? And why isn't the house listed as an inherited asset? I explained patiently. Didn't you realize? The house was rented. You signed the lease paperwork. You should have known. Julia looked stunned. If that's true, how did you pay rent on just $600 a month? I used my savings, I replied. The inheritance from my parents. Tom's eyes widened. You mean, I spent the $500 from the inheritance on credit card purchases. I thought I'd pay it back with more funds. Sam chimed in with a revelation. Julia, we know where the money went. You've been using it for your affair. We have proof. He handed Tom a report from the investigator he'd hired. Tom's face darkened as he read the evidence. Julia, you were cheating on me? I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. Julia sat frozen in shock, her facade crumbling. Her lover had been deceiving her too. I told you leaving would make you regret it, I said. Julia glared at me but said nothing, her expression hollow. Yes, she admitted, I was unfaithful. But I'm leaving Tom now. I don't need him. For the first time, Tom stood up for himself. You're not going anywhere without paying alimony. You owe me for this. Julia scoffed but realized she had no leverage. Fine. I'll pay, but don't think I'm sticking around. I'm leaving for good. Sam added a final blow. By the way, Julia, your boyfriend is seeing someone else. You were just another fling. Julia's face turned pale as she read the report confirming the betrayal. Defeated, she left, borrowing money to cover her debts and taking on jobs to repay them. Even her parents refused to help, ashamed of her actions. Tom moved into a modest apartment, burdened by debt. He reached out for financial help a few times, but I refused. You chose to sever ties, Tom. It's time to take responsibility for your actions. Though it was painful to watch, I hoped this would teach him to grow into a better person. Living with Sam's family brought me joy and peace. The laughter of my grandchildren and the warmth of a loving household made life fulfilling. As I embraced my new reality, the chaos caused by Tom and Julia faded into a distant memory. With my family around me, I finally felt at home.